okay to announce the next interviews in our series of live stream interviews we're doing at this event. We're going to switch to the live stream interview room on the roof, where there's going to be an interview with DCBuilder, followed by Victor Tron, and then finishing off with Dankrad Feist. Enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello, this is Sara Polak again for the afternoon section of the live interviews. This time like a bit of a dickhead with glasses on, but it's baking on the roof, so I'm sorry about that. At least they're transparent so you can see into my eyes. It's going to be a bit of a blitzkrieg afternoon because we've got three people straight after each other, but one is better than the other, and they're all awesome chaps, some of them waiting there in the background, but I'm also really lucky to have one spiffing young gentleman right here, DCBuilder. Hello and welcome. And I would like to ask you, so you've got like your official project that you work on. If you could just briefly tell us what you do, but also introduce the passion project that we spoke about when we were getting ready.
Okay. So, hello, I'm DCBuilder. My main project currently that I'm working on is alongside is crypto markets index product, and my passion project is DefBuild.me. Alongside is sort of trying to focus on creating the S&P 500 sort of representation of the crypto market and creating sort of a representation that anyone can easily get an exposure to the crypto markets. And DefBuild.me is a public good blockchain development guide. It's sort of a resource that I've created along with a few friends that contribute to it in order to teach people, or like in order to create a resource where any developer interested in building on blockchains can tap into to sort of have enough resources so that they can learn about building on top of blockchains and in different areas, and sort of to expand their horizons on top of what's possible to be built on top of blockchains. And so yeah, that's my pet project. And the public good part just essentially means that it's free, it's open source, maintained by community, and it's funded through public good funding. So I have a Gitcoin grant and also like a few ecosystem grants, and that's how it's funded. Yep.
It's epic because just now in a couple of the talks happening live, we were discussing the funding of projects like this, and we were discussing that you don't obviously want to be funded by the state, but actually like having it like purely like corporate funded isn't like also good. So like having the blockchain ecosystem for funding is awesome. How are you like finding it? Are people like interested in supporting this kind of stuff?
I feel like this is something that's particular to the blockchain space. We've curated a very good sort of list of values that the ecosystem has embodied. All of this is like giving towards or supporting projects that help the ecosystem because it indirectly adds value to the ecosystem. So let's say that if my guide teaches 100 or maybe like 1,000 or eventually tens of thousands of people to build on top of blockchains, those developers will then go to the job market. Then the job market will have more qualified applicants, and the biggest lack of any resource in the space, the scarcest resource in the space is talent. So people like companies that are very long-term oriented, they're more than happy to just go donate to these projects or to these ecosystem grants, and they create these programs to support the whole ecosystem so that it grows to the future, because they directly benefit through it. Maybe not quite directly, maybe like second order effects, but yeah, the ecosystem is very excited about contributing to these projects. So yeah, I feel like that's the case for our space.
Epic. And what basically really interests me as well, in a lot of the talks that we heard over the course of Eat Prague so far, is that like it's great that we're all like preaching to the choir, that we love it, we've got buy-in, but unless my grandmother can like literally use this stuff, it's not that helpful on the scale, and we'll be talking about scale with Victor a little bit later on. But how do you view that? Like, is that a part of your motivation of doing this kind of public good stuff that you do?
So personally, like, the reason why I'm motivated to build on this space is because like my personal own goal is to sort of maximize the amount of value that I can contribute throughout my lifetime to the space or to the world. That's sort of like what drives me personally. And so I've seen that the best way for me to contribute that value currently is through making resources more available, because me as someone that was also going through these resources not too long ago, I felt that the resources were not necessarily siloed, but they were unless you know the right people, sometimes you would miss the best resources. And so just creating an index of all of these resources and sort of giving more like high-level commentary on which resources you should go through and in which order felt like the right way to go, and so that's why I created the resource.
Nice. It almost sneakily seems like a bit of like an evolutionary optimization algorithm for your life and saving energy. And speaking of algorithms, I was really excited to find out that you actually were really proficient in artificial intelligence as well. And that's like part of some of those aspects that would motivate you to become a part of the blockchain scene, but also because AI just wasn't basically fulfilling the needs and the social needs that you expected it to. So can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
So like since I had this meta goal of like trying to contribute the most amount of value, I felt like in the AIML space before, I felt like I was not able to contribute any meaningful work because it's either you go into the academia space and you spend there like 10 years doing a doctorate and a lot of those kinds of things, and I'd have to spend a lot of my mental capacity to sort of push the boundary forward because it's a mature field, and so the competition is extremely strong and it's very hard to contribute on that front. And if I went to the industry, there's like a few very siloed companies like Google, Netflix, Amazon, and the entire bunch, which have all the data and they have all the edge and all the resources to basically outcompete everyone else. So I felt like that's not something I wanted to contribute my mental energy to. And so when I discovered the space of blockchains and Web3 in general, I felt motivated to contribute in a way where it felt really like I had a direct impact on the space, because there's very few people that sort of were focused on the greater good at the time that I joined. It was like 2017, 2018. A lot of things were very like scattered. Nobody knew what to do. So it felt very experimental. And so yeah, that's where I felt it had an impact and I could contribute the most amount of value with what I had to offer.
Yeah, totally. And like having been in the AI scene, like you, exactly as you say, in industry, you're going for the safe route forward. So literally like recommendation algorithms for ads, which is not a really like particularly sexy thing to work on. And academia is just like stifled. The funding is really difficult. Grants are really difficult. So do you see like an intersection between AI and the blockchain world? Like maybe somewhere where there was a crossover in terms of what you did or the way you approach the world?
Mm-hmm. I feel like right now the projects that intersect the both, I feel like they pressured AI into something where it's not ready for yet. There's a big lack of structured data in blockchains, and so in order to use AI, you need lots and lots of structured data and like mature pipelines for like curating data, pre-processing, all of those things. The few projects that use AI to some capacity are things like Gauntlet for analyzing like hyperparameters for DeFi and setting like parameters in different ways. But they use also other types of math, not necessarily AI. I've seen also some like data analytics types of things where they try to predict a few things which may be useful as well. But currently I haven't seen like a big application that really requires AI within blockchains. I feel like it will come once the technology becomes more mature and the platform sort of also is easier for people from other fields to experiment with, because right now there's like not a very steep learning curve, but it's still a learning curve of I feel like 1 to 2 years for an AI person to contribute meaningful work with AI on top of blockchains. So I feel like once it's more streamlined and the technologies are more mature, it makes more sense to use AI in blockchains.
Nice. Well, that actually gives me hope. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting to the end of this particular interview. There'll be more AI, there'll be more blockchain, there'll be more ETH, everything. But I would say that I would like to continue with you over a beer, and I've got a cold one sitting right there that's almost full, and there's a heat. Oh, it's tempting me. But you don't drink, which is kudos to you, which is good because you're keeping your brain nice and fresh, and we need that because not only do you contribute so much to the blockchain community, but you're also co-hosting Eat Prague, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the co-organizers.
One of the co-organizers. Ladies and gentlemen, the Renaissance man, DCBuilder. Thank you so much. I really appreciated talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very pleasant conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Right. Take care. Thank you.
Thank
you. See you later. And I'm now calling my next victim over. Victor, hello. See you. Everything's streamlined. Everything's absolutely fine. And Victor, we just mentioned a little bit about AI. And one of the things that we want to talk with Victor about is also like the de-bullshitting basically of a lot of the blockchain stuff, a lot of the crypto stuff, but also some of the AI stuff. So Victor, if I could just ask you really quickly, basically, well, first tell us, what do you do? Just to kick it off nice and easy.
I'm team lead for the Swarm project. Basically, I'm the president of the Swarm Foundation, which is the organization behind the Swarm project.
Nice. And you come from the kind of artificial intelligence field a little bit as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have several hats. My career, I've been a linguist, I've been AI researcher, also worked in natural language processing and all kinds of machine learning tasks.
I got to tell you, language, and sorry, this is a bit of a geek out moment. When you look at like people like Noam Chomsky, if you go away from the fact that he's a massively political beast, language and semantics and the structure and looking for patterns in data, whether that's deciphering the Enigma or translating the Rosetta Stone, is so interesting. Do you find that you could kind of blend that interest of yours with the stuff that you do now as part of the Swarm project?
It's part of the plan, the future plan, but not yet, not completely.
Oh, sorry, I'm curious. I know I sound like a TV presenter. I'm really sorry, but I'm interested in this future project. So unless you're like James Bond and you have to kill me if you tell me, what does it look like? At least like the brief outline.
Good point. Maybe I have to kill you after that. Yeah. So, not to give it away too much, but it's basically my conviction throughout my years of linguistic study and research was always I was on the position that language is not as Noam Chomsky says, basically a result of generative grammar and or the kind of synchronic like structural properties of language, not emerge or explained by the formal properties of this say model of the language organ in your brain, but actually a result of evolutionary processes of language use and formed by the slight mutations that are enforced by certain natural and organic forces in using language. So, for example, frequent words shortening is typically like a typical manifestation of motoric memory, doing reductions over repeated tasks. It's the same effect as when religious people see a church, they just do like this. It used to be like properly like the cross. And really, this is the same as when you say like don't know, meaning I don't know. So it's like, and these kind of processes require a completely different approach and assume some sort of kind of complex system approach, which has to do with like basically evolutionary processes as certain patterns mutate as they transfer, as language units of language like transferred between learners of the language, like as from generation to generation it's transferred, and they themselves, the hosts, their understanding and their auditive capacities provide some sort of habitat constraints over the survival of language structures, and this way of explanation is rather organic, functional, and kind of all-inclusive rather than the Chomskyan approach of thinking of language as a special module that's only possible with humans and human cognition.
I really love the kind of like emergent patterns and the emergent behavior you're talking about. What really interests me is memes. Memes are, like, for me, absolutely fascinating. You've got a global symbolic language, like people tried with Esperanto and failed miserably because it was too artificial. I'm really curious whether maybe memes are a part of, like, or memetics, whether they're a part of, like, what you're interested in as well, or not really.
It's a very good question. I've been consciously using some of these memes in my work. Usually I'm on the opinion that when you make a theory or like formulate a thesis or some sort of approach that you want to dumb down and people to understand like the components of and the logic of, then it's usually quite good advice to name the things that are familiar and so things that resemble already existing concepts. Then use them with familiar language, call them what they are. But new concepts and novel concepts are often better mnemonized and recalled if you somehow attach them to some sort of language, some sort of pun or language joke or make some nice sounding acronyms and stuff, which is kind of my way of dealing with this. So
Nice, because one of the things I'm really interested in as well, and yeah, sorry, we're having a bit of a nerdy conversation, but yeah, bear with us, is the like effective spread of information between people. I was actually, I'm now doing a book on teaching kids history, but through memes so that they can like remember it better. You're from Hungary, is that right? Yes, so it's the Ergo-Finnish like language group, so completely different. How strong do you feel there's a link between language and like effective knowledge transfer, but also like culture? Like, do you take the anthropological approach as well?
Well, I think that what's really interesting is how similar thinking in humans are, despite the fact that they speak different languages.
Yeah.
Often the opposite is emphasized, that some sort of language constraint enforce a particular view on you. But I see less and less important evidence of that. Yeah. So, for example, languages which have clearly human gender inspired gender systems in their language, they don't seem to exhibit more kind of gendered view of people. Yeah. It's like it doesn't seem to be true. On the other hand, no matter how hard you try, like languages which kind of enforce the expression of some sort of epistemological background in expressing your thing. So, for example, it enforces on the speaker to say whether they know something from hearsay, from indoctrinated like spiritual knowledge, or they just conjecture it, or they want it to happen. And in these languages don't seem to be more focused on where information comes from than languages where this is not structurally obligated on the language users to express. So it seems that in general use of logic and concepts is more of a cultural thing that's relatively more dissociated from language structure itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the Swarm project, is that also like a swarm intelligence approach that you're looking at, like how people communicate, how they kind of pass information, etc.?
No, but in a sense it's related also to what I expressed, because I believe that ultimately the future-proof infrastructure in a self-sovereign society where people have a synergistic platform to keep their personal data and offer it for AI processes or machine learning as training data. They basically lead to a lot more opportunities to find hive mind in implementation of swarm intelligence in that sense. But this is of course like explicitly targeting this problem is way in the future. It's on my agenda in some funny way, but
I would love to have your agenda, and we need to talk more after this because you absolutely blown me away. And ladies and gentlemen, it was an academic discussion, but goddamn was it interesting. All right, cool. Unfortunately, apparently the time is up. They're just showing me from backstage, and it breaks my heart. But let me help you up. Oh, yeah. All right, cool.
Thank you, sir.
There's your mask. There you go. And thank you so much. It was really interesting, and you've really given me a lot of inspiration. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. All right. Awesome, thank you. And I am looking for my next victim and last victim. We've got a bit of a triumvirate happening here. The third triumvirate, much better than the one that Augustus and Caesar had. So I'm inviting Dan Crowd. Yes. And when we were preparing on how to do this interview, we were basically like thinking, oh, what would you like to talk about, and like making sure that it's actually interesting for you as well. And you mentioned that scaling the blockchain technology is really important. So what did you mean by that?
I think the great thing that is happening now, and like we've been talking about scaling for many years.
So there's a very important cross on the floor here that we need to get to.
Okay, sure.
Thank you so much.
Cool. And now it's finally happening. So like we're like I know too many people it doesn't feel that way, because like clearly like there were promises made back in 2014, 2015, and then everything always got delayed and so on. but actually now things are happening, and we have all these rollups, for example, which are now active, and so it is actually possible now to make much cheaper transaction, and I think that is what's exciting, because clearly the first generation of blockchains that we had so far cannot really like deliver what it promised, because it can only really serve very few people, and so like in the end that kind of limits its use.
Yeah, nice. Thank you very much. Also, you're such a gentleman. My hand was hurting so much with the microphone. I'll be passing it to you. But basically, DCBuilder, who went first, I was like asking whether you all know each other, and he said that you're, and I'm definitely going to get this wrong. Is it the Dangrat sharding? Is that right? And he said, oh, this guy's just awesome. And I was like, tell me what it means. And then he started talking in very deeply about numbers and cryptography, and I got lost. So if you could try explain for yourself, please, so I can learn a little bit. Thank you.
Yes, so dank sharding is the basically a new version of sharding that we've kind of settled on in Ethereum community now, and it's a form of data sharding. So what it will do is it will provide this massive data availability layer that rollups can use in the future. So like the way Ethereum scales is that we build these layer 2s that will be able to provide the same security and the same guarantees at Ethereum, but have more freedom in their design space, and will be able to scale thanks to this data availability layer that we're building.
Nice. And do you think that will help with the scaling as well in that case? And it's just something I'm curious about, because the community is relatively new and it's like scaling like really exponentially. But how did you get into it? Like what actually drove you to, like what did you do in a previous life? Directly before this, I worked on an e-health startup, so it's a completely different thing. Wow. And yes, I gradually slipped into Ethereum research after discussing with some Ethereum researcher in the year 2018. And then I started doing some research with the Ethereum team. Yeah. Nice. And it's great because he just helped me massively with my next question. We were basically discussing the idea of governance as well, and that artificial intelligence, which was a massive boom as well, kind of failed in the sense that you can get great data interpretation, but you also then need the appropriate governance to execute it. Like if you do suddenly like personalized healthcare, but it's still the state running it, then it might not necessarily be the most efficient thing. How do you feel that blockchain can scale if it doesn't have kind of not legal governance, but we're like wondering about this aspect of scalability as well, making sure that people are, protected, that they're healthy, etc., that it fulfills those same needs and can kind of be a competition to them, but doesn't become a centralized force. It's a bit of a philosophical question, but curious what you think.
I think governance is one of the hardest questions in blockchain, and I think I would say it is actually the same as it is in the political realm. It's to a large extent a cultural question. Like there's only so much that can be codified and put into contracts and laws and whatever. But like if you look at constitutions of dictatorial state versus like relatively free states, they are often not that different. It's how it's executed and how people actually, like what their actual beliefs are. Like freedom of speech is not just about laws. It's also about culture, about whether people generally think. Like if your employer doesn't believe in freedom of speech, then often it doesn't help you very much if it's in some law.
Yeah, nice. And I'm just wondering, where are you from originally? And that leads on to another question, whether you perceive, because the blockchain community is very kind of global, but if we want to scale it, we need to take some anthropology into consideration as well, because every country functions slightly differently, different mentality of people. We discussed it in relation to language as well. So you've traveled across the world. So how do you see any kind of contrasts in that regard?
Right. So to your first question, I'm originally from Germany. I now live in London. Sorry, I don't really know what the second question is here.
The second question was whether you see kind of cultural differences in how the blockchain community or Ethereum community behaves in different countries across the world and has a tendency maybe to go in different directions.
Right. I mean, there are definitely differences. I mean, it's like, unfortunately, like often very much driven by like just what people can do locally. Like, I mean, like in many in many countries, it's much more about money and even just like being able to like hoping that somehow you can make a little bit of money out of it somehow. And in many countries, unfortunately, it's almost impossible, like in China now, to contribute. But yeah, I can see like lots of cultural differences, but I'm not able to speak to like where that comes from. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely fine. But I will ask about something else. In regards to the scaling, do you think there's actually like some groups that blockchain technology shouldn't be scaled to? So, for example, you live in London now, and the Parliament was discussing about creating like Britcoin and things like that. So you can see often very clumsily like these institutions trying to adopt this, but the spirit of blockchain is actually not congruent with their spirit. So I'm just curious whether you draw a line somewhere, whether you're happy that these institutions are taking over these modern technologies or trying to use them.
Right. I mean, like, in terms of, like, I mean, I guess where this is coming from is, like, talking about CBDCs and whether they'll actually, like, whether they are a threat to other blockchains. I think the threat is relatively little because I don't think governments in their current form will even be able to give people as much freedom in what they can do as blockchains do right now. And so I think they basically will barely be able to compete. So I don't know about that. Otherwise, I don't think like if they try to make an open system, then I think like yeah, like we can have all of these interact, and yeah, I think ideally they should build it on Ethereum as an L2.
I'm sure that the British Parliament knows exactly what you're talking about. And I'm curious as well because there was a real good vibe and community spirit across yesterday and today. So how did you penetrate into this community? And like, is it your first time in Prague? Like, how did you end up here that we're talking to each other?
Yeah, actually, it's my third time in Prague, but my second time coming to an Ethereum conference here because I was at DevCon 4, which was here. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it always feels like it's a really great city to do this because people really seem to embrace it and really lots of very enthusiastic people here, which you also see from this parallel Nepalness which they've built here, which is amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, and I'll get back to the scaling though, because also in the parallel polis here, we've been trying to educate people and like making sure that they start adopting the technology en masse, etc. But it's difficult because people are scared. There's a huge like psychological block. So maybe like as a final question, are there any like psychological steps that the community should take, reach out to the ordinary people, and do you see maybe any good examples of that we should follow?
Yes, so I mean, I agree. This is a big problem, in particular for Ethereum, where we have chosen this L2 scaling map, where like what you're interacting with is not really going to be Ethereum anymore. It's going to be this L2, and so like the big challenge is how do you know which ones of these are like serious, secure, and so on. And so like I mean, I think there's a really great website which is called L2Beat, where you can look up all the different L2s. And I think that is the spirit that crypto should embrace, like this basically a form of self-regulation where you show the users very transparently what they're using, what the risks are, and what is safe to use, and what exactly the trade-offs are. Yeah, I encourage everyone to use that, and like I think basically everything that there is you can see as a secure, or at least an L2 with a secure roadmap that I would encourage people to use and to try out now. And right now they aren't full L2s, like very few of them have the full security functionality implemented, but I think within the next year we're going to see that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I mean, you heard it here from like a lot of people, but Dankrat really summarized it nicely. And actually, this wasn't meant to be a prop. It was just because so I've got it on me in case someone needs anything urgently. But I've got Captain Nemo on the bag here from the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And actually using technology in the right way can give you the independence that you need, not to be reliant on just like one way of life, but to be able to choose and to be able to liberate yourself. And I know I sound like a motivational coach right now, but like studying and a little bit more into what ETH is or what blockchain is in general can really help you, no matter whether you're like the average person on the street or already like deep in the community. So thank you to people like you for doing what you do and popularizing it as well as like dramatically helping it technologically. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you. And you guys, we're finished with the live streams for today, so I will go and have that beer that's hypnotizing me at the table there. But we'll see you again tomorrow, kind of like early afternoon. And please try and come if you can make it, or just see you tomorrow. All right, take care and thank you.